Tonight, more bloodshed in Ukraine as Russia strikes new civilian targets. A new report highlights the grim collective death toll from conflicts around the world. A hint of good news for households as inflation eases and hopes lift for another pause in rate rises. And climate protesters disrupt day one of the second Ashes test. I'm Lynn Evelyn. This is SBS World News. Good evening. The death toll from a Russian missile strike in eastern Ukraine has risen to 9. An emergency rescue operation has been launched and the mayor of the city of Kramatorsk says another body has been pulled out of the rubble. Rescuers say 56 people were injured in the strike, which hit a busy restaurant hub. A second missile hit a village on the outskirts of the city, injuring 5. Russia has denied attacking civilian targets, while Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has condemned the attacks.
Each such manifestation of terror proves over and over again to us and to the whole world that Russia deserves only one thing as a result of everything it has done: defeat and a tribunal.
It comes as Ukraine's counteroffensive appears to pick up steam. Much of the fighting is focused on Bakhmut, captured by Wagner mercenaries in May. In 2022, the number of people who have died from conflicts around the world reached levels unseen in this century. That's according to a new report. The Global Peace Index has found a rise in unrest across 79 countries. But as reporter Naveen Razik explains, progress is being made in some nations scarred by war. And a warning, the following story contains distressing content.
It makes for sobering reading. The world has become less peaceful over the past 15 years, according to the Institute for Economics and Peace. In 2022, the number killed in conflict, 238,000, almost double the previous year. It's the highest global toll since 1994, the year of the Rwandan genocide. The bloodiest conflict last year was not in Ukraine, it was Ethiopia's Tigray War. Brutal fighting between government forces and rebel groups killed 104,000 people in the war's final 3 months. Ranked second, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, where last year 82,000 people are estimated to have been killed. The report finding almost 2/3 of Ukrainian men aged 20 to 24 years have either fled the country or died on the battlefield, crippling plans to rebuild.
Modern wars are almost unwinnable, but they come with a massive economic cost. The cost of violence to the global economy in 2022 was $17.5 trillion, 13% of global GDP.
Ukraine saw the biggest falls in peacefulness year on year, followed by Haiti, Mali, Israel and Russia, while for the 6th consecutive year, Afghanistan is the world's least peaceful country, ranked below Yemen and Syria. Conflict-related deaths in the country fell 91%, a year after the Taliban's return to power, which brought 2 decades of Western military presence to an end. The nation that witnessed the largest improvement was Libya. The North African nation was at its most peaceful since 2014, the start of its second civil war. But political instability remains high, and incarceration rates and violent demonstrations are on the rise. At the top of the Peace Index, Iceland. Ranked second is Denmark, New Zealand number 4, Australia in 22nd place behind Qatar.
So what creates peace is quite systemic. They accept the rights of other people, they're reasonably equitable in the distribution of their resources.
And those peaceful nations have traditionally enjoyed strong economic growth, proving war does not pay.
Naveen Razik with the report. Pitch-invading protesters at Lord's have had to be restrained by England players, disrupting play at the start of the second Ashes test match. 3 protesters took to the field. England fielders stepped in to stop them from throwing orange powder on the pitch. One was apprehended by Johnny Berto, who carried the protester to the boundary. Officials have said they've been concerned about the threat of Just Stop Oil protesters disrupting test matches this summer and the potential of matches being abandoned if pitches are destroyed. US actor Kevin Spacey has appeared in a London court at the start of his trial on a dozen sex offence charges. The Oscar-winning actor denies allegations of historic offences, which are said to have taken place between 2001 and 2013. While cost of living pressures cripple Australian households, there may be relief ahead as inflation eased sharply to an annual rate of 5.6%. Today, the Treasurer also spruiked a stronger surplus than anticipated.
A chipper-looking Treasurer.
We are now supremely confident, not just that there will be a surplus in 22-23, the first in 15 years, but also then that it will be bigger than we printed.
That forecast, $4.2 billion. The opposition leader working on his racket skills today before taking a swing.
The government's had decisions that they've taken which have made a bad situation worse for a lot of families. Small businesses are now paying double-digit interest rates for their overdrafts. There is a softening in consumer demand.
Getting the budget in much better nick is what makes it possible to provide billions of dollars in cost of living relief.
But economists warn it's a delicate balance to strike.
If the government does look to provide that support, it really needs to look at cutting expenditure elsewhere so that we start to bring down government spending as a proportion of GDP back down to pre-COVID levels. At the moment, they're still elevated. And that higher additional government spending is just adding to overall inflationary pressures.
The positive news, today's monthly consumer price index indicator saw a sharp drop to 5.6% from 6.8% in April. Breaking down the figures, petrol prices helped offset the rise, down 8% on May 2022. However, food and non-alcoholic beverages saw a significant jump to 7.9% on last year. But it was housing that saw the greatest increase, up 8.4%. This includes rent, new dwelling purchases by owner-occupiers and electricity, up a staggering 14.1%. With that in mind, today's figures from the Australian Energy Regulator shouldn't come as a surprise, revealing the number of people in debt on their energy bills has jumped by almost 14% since last quarter, and prices are only going up.
The default prices for most Australians are going to be increasing by around 20%, and that starts from the 1st of July.
Wide agreement that inflation is still too high, with more heavy lifting ahead. Tanya Dendrinos, SBS World News.
A New South Wales MP is warning the Chinese diaspora that misinformation is spreading about the Voice referendum on social media app WeChat. Labor State MP Jason Yatsen-Lee says he has seen a number of false claims circulating on the app. One, he says, claims that if the referendum is successful, people's homes would be taken away.
If you see it, call it out. So in the comments, say this is fake news, this is not true, and give the correct information or the facts. And it's also incumbent on the Yes campaign, on the No campaign, and on the Australian government to make sure that migrant communities, those that may not have a deep understanding of our system of government, get that basic understanding about how things work so that the misinformation doesn't have a hotbed in which to spread.
Mr Lee has given a speech in Parliament this evening where he spoke about the dangers of misinformation during the Voice campaign and its potential effect on migrant communities. It's hoped a new federal government pilot program to help improve digital literacy for migrant and refugee women will break down barriers for those settling in Australia. Research suggests almost 1 in 4 people in the country are left out.
For Mariam Zaid, navigating the digital world hasn't always been this easy. She fled Afghanistan more than 20 years ago. Now, in a social media age, she stays connected to her community through the love of food.
And traditionally, we have it with sultanas. My cooking side is a much softer entry to the heart and minds of my community and target groups. My work was sincerely around how do I connect Afghan women with each other.
Ms Zaid is the founder of charity Afghan Women on the Move, which also supports refugees settling in Australia. Part of her work helps break barriers with digital literacy.
The language barrier, the confidence, the safety and security, that it all comes together.
The challenge compounded by the pandemic, internet accessibility and affordability. A 2020 report into digital inclusion of new migrants and refugees suggests about 1 in 4 are excluded.
Recently arrived migrant women and of course refugees may not have the confidence or the digital skills to fully participate in the Australian community.
Funding a 12-month pilot program for training in digital literacy with a $700,000 grant for the Good Things Foundation.
We're looking for 20 different organisations that we're going to provide some grant funding to work with us to design that program, and then to be able to have bilingual digital mentors that will support women in the community.
The pilot will reach some 800 migrant and refugee women. Impacts of exclusion in this space go beyond isolation. The lack of knowledge also makes people more vulnerable to online scams.
It is the cause that needs to be invested for them to be brave and to be equipped with the right information to lead their own voice and have a choice, because choice is power.
Pablo Vinales, SBS World News.
Coming up, why a new age counting law in South Korea is making people younger.